In the 1990s, fighting games were at the height of popularity. Games such as Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat paved the way on how we played competitive one-on-one games. Candy cigarettes were still a thing, and everybody loved them some Big League Chew. The beat-em-up genre would find their way into the fold during the 80s, starting with games like Renegade and Double Dragon the Arcade. Other games would follow, and the fighting genre of video games would also spin off into their own set of TV shows. One game that should have had one was Streets of Rage. The Streets of Rage series, in my opinion, is arguably the best beat-em-up franchise to date. Between character development, storyline, moveset, music, and visuals, it's hard to say otherwise. Some would say that Final Fight was the better of the two. Not saying Final Fight was a bad game, but overall I just didn't feel that it was better than Streets of Rage. In 1992, only 1 year after the release of Streets of Rage 1, we would see quite possibly the best overall beat-em-up game ever created. That being said, dust off your Reebok pumps, put on your fanny packs, crack open a can of Surge, and plop down into your favorite beanbag chair. It's time to go down memory lane as we go over one of the best Sega Genesis games ever created in Streets of Rage 2. One year has passed since the events of Streets of Rage. To celebrate the defeat of the mysterious Mr. X and his criminal organization, the Syndicate, the trio of Adam Hunter, Axel Stone, and Blaze Fielding had met at their favorite night spot in the city, reminiscing about both their vigilante crusade and triumphant victory from within the previous year. Axel and Blaze had moved out of the city after the adventure, with Axel working as a part-time bodyguard and Blaze teaching dance classes. Adam has since rejoined the police force and lives in a small house with his younger brother Eddie, Skate Hunter. The next afternoon, Blaze had received an unexpected yet emergency phone call from Skate, who had informed her that upon arriving home from school, Skate was shocked to find his house in ruin and his older brother missing. Attached to the front door was a picture of Adam chained to the wall and at the feet of Mr. X. The criminals began to retake the streets once more, as beatings and looting took place regularly and in broad daylight. Chaos reigned in the city, far worse than before. Realizing that Mr. X and the Syndicate have returned for revenge against them and the city, Blaze wastes no time in informing Axel about the unexpected situation, with Axel himself personally vowing to help Blaze out in defeating Mr. X and rescuing Adam. From within the preparation of their upcoming second battle against Mr. X and the Syndicate, Blaze and Axel are soon joined by Skate, who wishes to help out in rescuing and saving his older brother Adam and Axel's friend, a professional wrestler named Max Thunder, who also seeks to help aid Axel and Blaze out as well in rescuing and saving their kidnapped friend. The quartet soon embarks on a rescue mission which will take them from the city all the way to Mr. X's hideout on a desolate island, where they will eventually face Mr. X and his bodyguard Shiva. Unlike the other two games in the series, Streets of Rage 2 has only one ending, where Mr. X is defeated and Adam is rescued, after which the heroes leave via helicopter. At which point everything is right in the world up until Streets of Rage 3. Streets of Rage 2 was designed by 6 companies that included Sega, Ancient, Shout, DesignWorks, M&M Software, and HIC. Streets of Rage 2 was coded by the same programming team that did the original game. To make it possible to add more features, they added additional memory cache. Programmers also improved the Mega Drive cartridge specifications. The lead designer and planner was Ancient's Ayano Kishiro. She designed the graphics, characters, and in-combat mechanics. Some of her early work consisted of Sonic the Hedgehog, ActRaiser 1, ActRaiser 2, Beyond Oasis, and Lunar the Silver Star. Her brother Yuzo Koshiro was the lead music composer and provided input on combat. Some Genesis enthusiasts, including myself, hold Yuzo Koshiro's music in the highest regard when talking about Streets of Rage 2. The music of Streets of Rage 2 was superb, and who could forget the track that set everything up in level 1? The duo took inspiration from a Street Fighter 2 arcade cabinet which they had installed at the Ancient office. This would help them in designing the fighting mechanics of each character as well as their overall look. The amazing soundtrack for Streets of Rage 2 was composed by Yuzo Koshiro along with 3 contributions from Motohiro Kawashima. It was composed using then outdated NEC PC 8801 hardware alongside Koshiro's own audio programming language. According to Koshiro, quote, "For Bare Knuckle, I used the PC-88, an original program language I developed myself. The original was called MML, also known as Music Macro Language. It is based on NEC's basic program, but I modified it heavily. It was more of a basic style language at first, but I modified it to be something more like assembly. I called it Music Love and used it for all of the Bare Knuckle games." Square Enix Music Online praised the soundtrack for having, quote, "some of the baddest beats ever to grace a video game soundtrack," and I wholeheartedly agree with that statement. I personally felt like the music pulled the most out of every level. Looking at the visuals, the action, and the speed of each level, the music tied in beautifully. As far as all-time rankings go, you can look at a slew of different sources across the internet. I just went ahead and I tried to find just a handful of my own sources just from recent date, and then we will also talk about some that were from when the game first was released, and then you can decide on how this game should be ranked. So Business Insider puts it in the top 20 games during Sega Genesis's 30th anniversary. Ranker.com has it at number 3 on the top 100 Genesis games. It is also shown that Midwesterners were 2 times more likely to vote for Streets of Rage 2. What exactly that says about Midwesterners, I'm not exactly sure, but it was a weird random fact nonetheless that I thought I would share with you guys. Complex.com rated it as number 4 on their list of Genesis games. High Snobiety had it as a top game without a number ranking. RetroSanctuary.com had it listed at number 13 on their top 100 Sega Genesis games. SegaBits.com had it ranked at number 7 of all-time Sega games that would also include the Dreamcast and Saturn games. And then we move on to IGN.com. IGN didn't even rank it in the top 100 games of all time. Now, don't get me wrong, I understand beat 'em up games aren't for everybody, but however, when you go through this list, a lot of them, the reasons why they're putting them in there based off of kind of almost like nostalgia factor, because they would say things like, oh, for, during the times this brought this to the table, or it was innovative because of this. So if that is the case, Streets of Rage 2 should be on that list. Maybe not super high, but it should be there nonetheless because it brought just a slew of different things to the game that were not currently available during that time. So they had Miss Pac-Man ranked at 47. 47, people, okay? And I'm not saying that Miss Pac-Man is a bad game or anything like that. I'm just trying to say here, if you're going to put a game like Miss Pac-Man at 47, why would you not put a game like Streets of Rage 2 at the very least on this list? It just doesn't make sense to me. And I understand that this list was compromised of every system. But come on, guys. Those of us who've been around the block understand the importance of this game. And then, not to mention, there was 7 out of the top 10 games were all Nintendo games, primarily Mario games. So there might be just a little bias going on here. So then I tried looking for another ranking from IGN, and then we found the video games that were from the 1990s, their top list from the 90s. There, not only we found that in the top 10 list, there were hardly any Sega games, but there was no N64, Dreamcast, Saturn, or PlayStation games. That right there was a red flag to me, and I don't know who the hell they questioned, but that tells me right there that this ranking for top 90s games is completely flawed. And not to mention, the only 2 Sega games that were even in the top 10 was Sonic 1 and Sonic 2. I could see Sonic 1 being there for how influential it was for the times, but having both of them, and then basically it was like Sonic was in one spot and then Sonic 2 was right below it. I mean, that just right there kind of showed me that it was kind of like they were trying to just give it something like, oh, well, we'll put Genesis here. There are far better Sega Genesis games, in my opinion, that could have been in the top 10 other than Sonic. I'm not saying it was Streets of Rage 2, but I'm just saying overall I felt that there could have been something else other than Sonic, or at the very least take Sonic 2 out and put something else in there. And then they also had the original Mario Kart for Super Nintendo ranked at number 3. Are you kidding me? Number 3, I can see if they wanted to put Mario Kart 64 in that position, but putting the SNES version there doesn't make any sense. Was it a good game? Absolutely. But it just looked to me as if someone had a freaking hard-on for Super Nintendo and just wanted to throw everything they could onto this list. Sorry, IGN, I just don't think we should be listening to your sources on this. Continuing on, other accolades include getting the Mega Game Award from Mean Machine Sega and the Sega Force Smash Award from Sega Force. Electronic Gaming Monthly gave it the award for, quote, hottest video game babe. I can't say that without laughing because it's just like, you know, it's 16-bit and it's just hilarious to me. I can't help it. And of course, they were referencing Blaze, and this was back in 1993. Streets of Rage 2 has been considered to be by many one of the best video games ever created. In 2004, readers of Retro Gamer magazine voted Streets of Rage 2 as the 64th best retro game of all time, and the staff later included it in their top 10 list of Mega Drive, Game Gear, and Nomad games. Regarding its sales upon its release in North America, it was one of the top 5 best-selling Genesis games in December of 1992. It was also among the top 5 Genesis games at Babbage's for several months through March of 1993. In Japan, it was the top-selling Mega Drive game in January of 1993, and 11th in the All Formats chart in its debut week in the UK. It debuted as number 1 bestseller of all format console game charts, as well as the Mega Drive chart in January of 1993. The following month, it was the UK's second best-selling console game, falling just below Super Mario Kart for the Super Nintendo. It remained among the top 5 console games and top 3 Mega Drive games for several months through April of 1993. Later on, the Xbox Live Arcade digital version of Streets of Rage 2 sold more than 184,555 units. As of August of 2020, GameStat estimates that the game has 570,000 players on the Xbox 360 and 1.5 million players on the PS3. A free-to-play Android version of Streets of Rage 2 has received more than 1 million mobile game downloads as of 2019. And if this isn't enough information to tell you that Streets of Rage 2 should be possibly ranked pretty close, at the very least, next to Super Mario Kart for the SNES, I don't know what more information we need. Streets of Rage 2 will forever go down as one of my favorite games, and it also holds a large amount of nostalgia in my heart. There are just a lot of things that Streets of Rage 2 sparks up in my memory bank as a kid, but all that aside, it's still hard to argue that this is one of the best games to come out from the Genesis. After the huge success of Streets of Rage 2, one would have thought that the anticipation for 3 would have paid off. However, it seemed like the fan base from Streets of Rage 2 didn't quite respond the same way to Streets of Rage 3. I, for one, felt that Streets of Rage 3 was probably the worst of the 4 games released, but I'm not saying that it was a bad game overall. I'll be diving deeper down that rabbit hole in another video going over my opinions on that game. The saving grace to the Streets of Rage franchise was the highly anticipated release of Streets of Rage 4. Retro snobs such as myself absolutely loved the work done with Streets of Rage 4. Bringing Adam back as a playable character was probably one of the most anticipated things for me as an original Streets of Rage fan. I was not disappointed as his moveset, look, and speed of the character were just spot on. I know it would be hard to continue the Streets of Rage story given that Mr. X is now deceased and the Y children have been defeated. As a fan, I would love it if they just continued to drive this franchise with a continued storyline. I'm not quite sure where the story would go from here, but I personally would buy it just for the sake of getting another shot at playing as my favorite characters. I hope you guys enjoyed up to this point, and now it's time to go crack some skulls.